Hello, everybody, and welcome to the fourth episode of this Soul Stories podcast series. I'm your host, Michelle Ann, and today I am so goddamn excited to introduce you to my guest, aka / friend, the amazing Emily Shine. Emily and I feel like we've known each other for like 400 million years, but we were just discussing how long we'd actually known each other for, and we came up with only about maybe 3.5 years at the max. Is that correct, Emily?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Time flies. Yeah, it's amazing when you meet someone and just connect at a soul level. And the minute we met each other, I don't know about Emily because actually she didn't remember me when we first met, but I remembered her. I remember looking at Emily. I was at a daycare, like a family market thing, and she walked up to my stall and started talking to me. And within about 2 minutes, I'm like, I'm going to be this girl's friend instantly. She was just really cool. She smelled of essential oils. She was a true hippie, just like me. And we absolutely connected instantly and never looked back since. So I'll let Emily tell you a little bit about herself, but from my perspective, she's an amazing healer, a spiritual / life coach, I suppose you would say. She's a kinesiologist. She's literally the guru. I call her my mentor, even though she's my friend, because she's really helped me along my journey like massively. So if you've listened to the first episode of my Soul Stories podcast, you'll hear Emily got a mention in there because she was pivotal in my journey of going from basically living that 9 to 5 crazy job to where I am now with my business. Because when I met Emily, I didn't even really have a business, and she really helped me with the kinesiology and her spiritual coaching course to get me out of that rut and get me confident. And I think there's definitely deeper things going on, like got me confident, but Emily worked at a deeper level with the kinesiology side of things to really get me to step into my power, I suppose you would say. So, but I'll let Emily introduce herself and you can tell us a little bit about what you do now, and then we'll dig a bit deeper into where you've come from and how you got where you are now, because your story. Emily's is writing a book, basically. That's still happening, Emily?
It is. Yeah, I guess when we talk about the story a little bit more, your listeners will understand as to why that might be on hold a little bit, because it's very extremely vulnerable to put that out into the world. So it's a bit of a process to really come to a place of acceptance to be able to share that in text
huge.
form.
It's so huge. I mean, even doing these podcasts, I realize are quite vulnerable for people, because I'm asking some pretty deep questions and I'm asking people to share about where they've come from, which also involves usually a lot of pain, a lot of trauma, and other people. Oh, I got goosebumps. So it involves, it's not just you, it's a whole story that involves others. So I understand it's a bit scary to put yourself out there, and writing a book's even more full on because it's in paper, it's hard copy, it's out there forever.
That's it. And you hit the nail on the head when it comes to sharing about myself and my story. I've definitely shifted past that place of fear with that. I'm more than happy to speak about it and talk about it with anybody, but it's the sharing other people's stories that are involved or entangled in mine that is the scary part, because I think a lot of us can resonate with the not wanting to upset others and not wanting to hurt others or accidentally speak in a way that affects other people's lives. So that's definitely the hold when it comes to putting this book out. But there's also a trust in knowing that will unfold and that will come out exactly when it's meant to come out. And there's obviously more to be written within that story before it starts to take on whatever its journey is into the world, and whoever needs to read it. A few people have read the start of it, Michelle being one of them, a few of my close friends, and it's just getting it to feel right and getting the timing right as well.
Yeah, I can't wait till it comes out, because your story is absolutely amazing, and I'm so excited that the listeners get even a little bit today in what you tell us, because everything you say, you probably think it's quite normal now because it's been your whole life, but I'm like, what? That happened? Or you came from that? What? It's just crazy. So yeah, I'm excited to hear where you've come from, but we'll start with where you are now. So basically just want to tell everybody basically what your life looks like now, what you do every day, like sort of what your daily what you do every
Sure.
day pretty much.
So by trade, I'm a kinesiologist. I actually started as an intuitive. So before I studied kinesiology, I was, working with reading cards, and I started doing that when I was 11.
11, of course you did.
I was 11 when I got my first deck of cards, and I was 19 when I first started doing that professionally. And at the same time, I was very entangled in holistic health and nutrition. I had a lot of health problems growing up, and conventional medicine didn't really assist me in those areas. So I remember being really, really sick, and had been sick for quite some time. And my mum ended up kind of just, beating her head against a brick wall, going, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help you. And she took me to a naturopath. And within a few weeks of working with a naturopath, I was on the mend. And this is after months and months and months of being really, really unwell. So I grew up understanding that non-conventional or holistic medicine was really beneficial. So as I was working in my intuitive business, I was also working within pharmacies, and I was managing pharmacies by the time I was 18 as well. And my area of love and passion was definitely the natural medicine side of pharmacies, which sounds like a complete contradiction. But when you walk into a pharmacy, you don't just get the drugs, you get a massive wall of vitamins. So I was learning from, all of the different companies, Blackmores and Nature's Own, and going and doing their courses, and just, sponging up as much as I could of the information as to why and how these nutritional medicines work. I also worked for a chiropractor, which was really, really interesting, because that taught me how to understand the nervous system of the body and how everything is interconnected. So, I'll talk about, how I got here in a little while, but I was struggling a lot with some anxiety issues. And one day a lady came along and told me a little bit about kinesiology, and she did some on me, and I loved it. And so it just kind of fit everything together for me. So I studied kinesiology. So now I still do a little bit of the intuitive work, but I really, really focus on, 12 years later, working with clients on a one-on-one basis from a kinesiology perspective. I do a coaching program, which is called Chakra Awakenings, which Michelle was talking
That's
about
the one
as
I did.
well.
I can never remember the name of it. I just know it was amazing.
Yeah.
So the Chakra Awakening program. That's is it 8 weeks?
It's 8 sessions, but we usually take that over a 2-week period in between each session, because there's a massive integration that happens between each session. So when you think about coaching programs, you think about going and talking about, what's going on in your life, and really having someone to soundboard and nut things out with. And that's so, so beneficial. And I myself really benefit from that as well. And Chakra Awakenings is like that, where you get to come and you get to sort of speak to what's kind of blocking you or what's coming up in your life. But then we take it to that next level, where we put you on the table and we go into, deep into your chakra system and find out why that blockage is there, and start to scoop things out. We start to, peel off the onion layers that have kind of built up over your lifetime. And it's extremely intense. I always give a warning label to people when they take that on. I'm like, this is not, this is not fluffy. This is going to change your life. It's not. I went through it myself. Like I had this program done for me as well. And, a lot of things fell away in that time. And that's, probably why I am the person that I am today, is because I got to, really shift through a lot of the stuff that I was holding on to. So I do that. And I've also stepped into teaching, which I'm so, so, so obsessed with. Michelle's just done my course in divine energetics and become a divine energetics practitioner. And divine energetics is incorporating 10 different modalities that I've learned over my time in this industry into, a hybrid modality, which allows muscle testing, which is what we use in kinesiology, to access and utilize all of these different modalities. And I really am passionate about that, because I have a really strong belief that we can go through our whole lives and sponge up all this information, but what's the point of having all this information if we can't pass it on to the world? So I teach, and that's definitely my number one area of wanting to really focus with where I'm at in the business, is to start teaching on a deeper level. And I'm also about to finish my yoga instructor training.
I know, that is so exciting. I'm obsessed with yoga at the moment.
Me too.
And I've just realized that I've invited a lot of people to come and be interviewed, and I've realized that half the people I've invited are actually yoga instructors. And it's with you now too. So
we need it. We need that ability to reconnect with our bodies. Like, that's what really led me into wanting to do it, is that I was so disconnected from myself because I was just putting my energy out into everybody and everything around me, and just getting lost and helping others and being all the things that we expect ourselves to be. And I remember it was at our not retreat, which Michelle came along to. We call it a not retreat because when COVID first hit, we had a retreat space that was booked just over the border, and you were allowed to go over the border, but they were sort of saying, oh, it's just for non-essential travel, or sorry, just essential travel or something like that. So you need your border pass and all the rest of it. And everyone was still going over there that was living close to the border. It was no big deal. But I couldn't really put my business to that. So I had this retreat space, and I'm like, okay, whoever wants to just come along and just, as a girls weekend. And it's up to you to, be responsible for what you do and don't do. And if you want to risk it, that's up to you. And so we just used this retreat space for a not retreat. And it was really lovely because it gave me a chance to step back a little bit and not be facilitating and not be, leading and putting my energy out into everybody else. It actually gave me a chance to put my energy back into myself. And beautiful Jessie Moss, one of the most incredible yoga instructors I have ever come across in my life. Big shout out to her. She's on my list too. Oh, you stand in front of this woman and it's like her energy radiates grounding. Like, it's just like, yeah. She did a yoga session with us there, and I remember the feeling of coming home to a dirty house. It was like I dropped back into my body and I was like, whoa, like I have really neglected you and I'm so disconnected. And it brought me to tears, and I knew in that moment that this is my next step. I need to be able to do this facilitator training, not just for being able to help others with yoga, but to really like cement in for myself this practice.
That's so interesting how everything just happens, the synchronicities, the fact that all that happened the way it happened and it dropped you straight into it. Like, that's amazing. And now you're going to be teaching.
Yeah, eventually. Yep. I'll be able to, I've already sort of started taking a few little classes through just sort of the more yin based or restorative based stuff, which is really where I like to focus anyway. I'm not much for the really hardcore vinyasa. It's not my bag.
It's pretty full on.
It is full on. I can do it every now and again, but it's definitely more intriguing to me to just really slow down and connect with your body. That's why I enjoy it, and that's where I foresee myself kind of going with my facilitation of it as well.
Yeah. So you're just a woman of many, many talents, and you're always picking up bits along the way. Every time you need something done, Emily's the woman, because she's just this one that has and talents, not just in the spirituality world, but like your graphic design, your photography, or if you've got a real creative streak going on there. It just amazes me every day. Like, I think, how do you even know how to do that? And you're really good at it. So I'm really
get bored. I get bored
bored
really easily, and then I have to find something else to do. I'm like, I'm bored of that. I've done that for a bit. What else can I do?
She's like Midas. Everything you touch turns to gold. It's amazing.
I think I've just undiagnosed ADD, to be honest.
Now the truth comes out.
Yeah.
What I'm really keen to hear about is how one starts reading cards at 11 years old. When you first get your first, like, how did that happen? Like, that's not, well, it's normal to you and it's probably normal to a lot of people, but for like the mainstream person that's listening to this, including myself, because, I didn't really fall into my sort of spirituality till when I sort of met you, really, in my 40s. Yeah. So how did that happen?
Well, it was safe for me because my family comes from a long line of, being very open and aware of spirituality from that particular sense. So my grandfather was a hypnotherapist and a past life regression therapist, and this is before Google existed. So, wow. That is probably one of my biggest claims to fame I will ever have, is to be able to toot his horn and say that he was doing this work before it was common knowledge, before it was something that was able to be Googled. Like, he was curing people's phobias, and it was just incredible. They did this massive 2020 expose on him, which is 2020 in New Zealand. I grew up in New Zealand, is like 60 minutes. And they were showing people who were so afraid of heights that they couldn't even step on step ladders. And he was doing, past life regression therapy with them and clearing their phobias. And they were jumping off the Sky Tower in Auckland, which, for those of you who don't know how tall that tower is, it's very, very, very tall. And, you know, you see things like that on TV and you go, oh, that's just smoke and mirrors. It's just for entertainment sakes. But he was my granddad. I knew that, you know, like I knew that firsthand, that everything that they were talking about was true because I'd seen these people and talked to these people. So, you know, I grew up before, as I said, before social media, before, you know, the internet was sort of offering this space for the conversations to be had. I grew up in a space where it was really accepted to have them. So I remember, you know, early on in my life, my mum taking us to what she used to call the gypsy fairs, which are just like, you know, your crystals and your crystal expos and your mind, body, spirit expos that we have these days. We used to have little ones of those when I was small, called gypsy fairs. And we used to go to those all the time, and I just loved it. And my mum was really into reading, and she's pretty intuitive in her own right. And yeah, she was the one that gave me my first deck of cards when I was 11, and I just took to it like a duck to water, and I just really loved it. And I was always called upon from my family members to do readings for them, and I just accepted. And so as I sort of grew, I could see that there was a space for these modalities to really help others. And I started doing it just on the side at 19 as a part of my profession, and it really helped me, and it really helped the people that I was associating with at the time. So that's how I really got it. I was born into it, really.
Yeah, it
so
was in your blood.
I was lucky to be able to have a safe space, which is not common back then, but it's really, really, really beautiful that it's super common these days, because to give a deck of cards to an 11-year-old these days is no big deal. Everyone would do that, like pretty much.
Yeah, it is. I gave my daughter her first deck at 5. So
exactly.
it's more and more common. She does whole room the other day was full of crystals and cards, and she's doing healings on her sister and saying you are love, you are power, you are grace. And I was like, whoa, because they just mimic everything
beautiful.
You do.
They do. And that's the thing, like that is the shift of the planet, and we can see it in black and white right in front of us when we see these kids doing these things, because they've had there's a thing around nature and nurture. So you can be born with a certain type of aspect within your nature, so you're going to gravitate towards certain things because of who you are as a person, but then you also need nurture, which is the environment to make that safe. So we're offering that to these kids these days, which is awesome. And that's why we're going to see an abundance of light workers continue to be introduced to this world.
So beautiful. So you never had a real like spiritual awakening as such, like people like me that came in later in life, but was there any sort of time in your life where you found it really dropped in for you, or was it just a gradual process?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that we have spiritual awakenings consistently throughout our life. Like we think we're at that space where we're like, okay, yep, we've had our awakening, and then bang, something else hits us and we awaken again and we awaken again and we awaken again. So there's been multiple times where I've gone through those sort of awakening processes, and I want to say the word up leveling, but that doesn't mean I don't want to connect that to any connotation of being in a hierarchical perspective where you're in a higher level than anyone else. The up leveling happens within yourself. Like you become a better version of you and a more understanding version of you, and that has happened multiple times for me, and it usually has come off the back of highly traumatic experiences, highly traumatic times in my life, or the times in my life where I've been the most challenged as well. So with my background, there was a lot of pain, there was a lot of trauma, and for a long time there I was only living half of my life because of the fear and the instability that created for me. But in the sense, when I really hit rock bottom, that was where I was like, well, this is rock bottom and I'm still here. And that really triggers like an enlightenment process, because you lean into surrendering a little bit more, because you realize no matter how hard you clutch, because boy, did I clutch. I was so anxious about life. And anxiety often shows up as control. Like you want to control everything around you. You want to control your environment. You want to control what happens next, because you're petrified that something is not going to go right. So you clutch and you clutch and you clutch. And when you lose everything, even though you've been clutching, it's almost a relief, because you're like, oh, well, no matter how much I clutch, things can all go sideways. So I guess I'll stop clutching and I'll just start surrendering. So, that the biggest part of that for me was when I separated from my ex-husband, and that was going on 6-7 years ago. So I was already doing, all of this work, and I had done a lot of healing within myself, but my need to please others had really led me to burnout big time. And I was in a very emotionally manipulative relationship, a very controlling relationship. And that, put me into fight or flight all the time. So eventually I had a full-on nervous breakdown. So I literally just, my whole body, physically, mentally, everything just broke down. My marriage broke down at the same time. I lost my home. I lost my kids because I couldn't look after them at the time. I didn't lose my kids legally, but I lost my ability to care for my children at that time. Like, I had to go back and live with my mum and let my mum nurse me like a little kid again, and until I could stand on my own 2 feet. And it was the most horrific time of my life. And I've been through way worse things on paper, but this was the thing that felt the worst because I lost myself in that moment. And no matter what people do to you or around you, as long as you've got your own center, you can get through it. But when you lose your own center, that is where, you really, that's the scariest moment. And so to look back on that, it's definitely was the worst time of my life. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I actually learned who I was, and I stopped living from this place of needing to burn out and living from this place of having to try and please other people or make myself into somebody that was enough for somebody else. And I really started to build this unwavering strength in my own character. And so I slowly started to build myself up to being, the best version of me that I could be. And yeah, it was about 2.5 years later, I met my now soon to be husband, and I have the most healthy, beautiful relationship that I could have ever imagined I would ever have. I never even saw relationships like that growing up. And I have this beautiful business, and I have the most incredible friends, and, life. I think that in telling my story in full, and when this book comes out, I really hope to speak to people who are still stuck in their victim. And that's not supposed to be an insult. It's just a truth. It's what happens when we're in a space of, darkness. When things have happened to us over and over and over again, it's really easy to get into a place of victim where it's like, no matter how hard I try, this is going to happen. Or why is this always happening to me? Or why did that happen to me? Or I'm afraid that is going to happen to me. That's the victim mindset actually speaking to us. Or you don't know what it's like because you haven't been through what I've been through is another big thing. And to hear someone who's been through, similar situations or just, whatever, something that you can relate to, come out the other side and go, you know what? Nothing that happened to you is your fault, but it's your responsibility to change that.
Wow.
And if you do, then you can have the life that you want. And that's the whole reason why I advocate, talking about our stories, our past, because we don't have to, be that version of ourselves anymore. We don't have to make that, identify that with that anymore. But in sharing our past and showing up as who we are now, then we give other people hope and understanding that they have a lot more power than what they're giving themselves credit for creating the life that they want to live.
That's huge. Sure. That is huge, because so many people look from the outside to people like you, including myself, and think she's got the perfect life. When I first met you, I didn't even know you had children, because I only saw you as a client practitioner, and I never saw kids around, obviously, because obviously you were working. So I thought, she's young, she's beautiful, she's just got all the shit together, she's got this amazing talent, she's she's got this beautiful, easy life. And people are probably thinking, oh, what would she know about trauma or pain? And to hear your story, it's going to inspire others to think, oh, okay, look at Emily now versus what you were in the bottom of the barrel. Like, you were rock bottom, as you said, where you just gave up, surrendered, and said, I can't do anything more. So people out there will be probably shocked to even hear your story, because they don't look at you like that. They look at you as this amazing, healer, mentor, coach sort of person. So I think it's really important, as you said, to get your story out there. And I'd love to hear a bit more about the anxiety side of things, because I was shocked when I heard that about you. And you were telling me how you couldn't even drive up the highway. It was debilitating for you. And again, I don't think people would realize that about you, and what people that are in anxiety maybe thinks that nobody else understands what they're going through. So do you want to tell us a bit about how you were feeling then?
Yeah, sure. I guess it's important to establish a foundation as to why the anxiety was so severe for me and in the first place. And that sort of starts at the beginning, I suppose. And that's that, when I was about 3 years old, I was the victim of sexual assault from a member of my family. And in coming home and speaking about that as a 3-year-old, so for those of you who are out there who know 3-year-olds, we're not super articulate about, being able to express what happens to us and, what things mean, because we don't quite understand. But I did understand, and I knew exactly what had happened. For some strange reason, I must have been, very onto it as a 3-year-old. But, going through a system of not only dealing with, the insafety of someone I trusted taking advantage of me, but also the insafety of then having to articulate that to other people within my family, who some of them did believe me, some of them didn't believe me. And then, being pulled through the court system and having to speak to police officers and things like that. It was an extreme case of, did I do the right thing? This is all my fault. Everyone's upset because I said something. And at 3, you just don't understand that. So it established, a very strong sense of watch what you say and don't always speak up, and, make sure everybody else is okay before you worry about yourself. And that's where that in safety really, I think, just started to develop for me. And then as I grew, because of what had happened to me, people put me in a bubble. They were like, this little girl, she's broken and damaged because this happened. So we can't, let her be naked in front of anyone or be naked in front of anybody. That was a big thing, like at 3, you don't care. You run around like my kids run around the backyard, completely in the nutty, having fun. That's what kids can do. But that was not an option for me. Everyone put me in a bubble. So when you put a child in a bubble, you're essentially passing on that energy of, you need to be scared of something. You need to be afraid of the world. It's not safe. Yeah. So there was that. And then I grew up in a household with, somebody like one of my parents, without sort of calling them out, one of my parents being heavily dependent on alcohol, borderline alcoholic, and another one being super abusive. And so there was always, tumultuous things going on in my household. There was lots of throwing of things and people being, knocked into fireplaces and all sorts of horrific things happening. So I was always in fight or flight because I didn't know what was going to happen next. And I had other siblings, but my siblings always found refuge somewhere else. I was the youngest, so I was always the one that had to kind of piece everything back together. So that fight or flight sort of lived throughout, most of my childhood. And then as I came into my teenage years, I actually started a relationship of my own when I was about 14, 15. I remember this boy that I was dating for a couple of years moved in with me on my 16th birthday, because I came to my mum and I said, he was a troubled guy and he didn't have anywhere to go. And I said that I was going to move out with him. And at 16, I was allowed to do that. And she said, no, he has to move in here. So at least I can keep an eye on both of you. So she did the right thing. But what she didn't know is that he was highly abusive. And so there was a lot of sexual abuse. There was a lot of physical abuse, emotional abuse going on. And at 16, your brain is not developed, to a place where you can deal with that in a logical manner. Often women of abuse, even in their adulthood, they think it's their fault, because that's how domestic violence often plays out. So I was in this relationship with this person who I thought I loved so much, and he was beating me every day, and I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. So basically what happens is, when you're really stressed, your gut health starts to go out the window, because your brain and your gut are very connected. So I started to develop some really bad digestive issues. So I couldn't keep food down, not to share too much information, but anything I ate came out the exact same way it went in, because there was no digestive flora, there was no lining in my stomach. It was horrific. I'm the same height today as what I was back then, at 16, and I weigh, about 70 kilos. But to look at me, you wouldn't think I'm a big person. I'm, pretty slim. And being the same height, I was 45 kilos. So I was a waif. I remember going to the hospital and them turning me away and saying, if I don't voluntarily eat something, that they would have to admit me and treat me for anorexia. And I did not have an eating disorder. I literally couldn't eat anything without having a massive reaction because my gut health was so bad. And this was the long line of doctors that we were seeing when mum ended up taking me to a naturopath to get some help. But really what started that was the situation I was in, with the high amount of stress. And it was long-term stress, because even though it had really been triggered through this really, violent and domestic violence situation that I was in, which my mum had no idea I was going through. No one had any idea I was going through, because it happened behind closed doors. That is where I started to develop extreme anxiety, because the gut-brain connection, it just kind of connects in with each other. And so I was really triggered with this anxiety disorder. So I ended up with agoraphobia. So agoraphobia means fear of leaving the house. And I didn't leave my house at all for 12 months. I stayed inside for 12 months. When I was 16, I had to drop out of school, and I was doing a course that I was really interested in at the time, and I had to drop out of that. And I remember looking out the window going, I wish I could just be a participant in my life. I wish I could just be like those kids that are walking down the street and just enjoy my life. But I couldn't even go to my letterbox. I was so afraid that if I left my house, I think a part of it was being too far away from my bathroom, because I was just so ill, and I didn't want to be embarrassed if I needed my bathroom for whatever reason. But then it was just also just the fear kind of accumulated from that point, where I just was just afraid of the outside world and whatever that, sort of meant. And so I obviously did start to recover a little bit from that step by step. There was, a big part to play, and that was my son's father, who, when I met him, I was basically a shell of a person, but I had managed to get out of the house, not far, but I had managed to get out of the house, and I met him at a fish and chip shop, of all places. So he gave me the safety to start stepping further and further out of my comfort zone, but I was still an anxious mess. And I battled with this anxiety disorder until I was about 26. Yeah, about 26, I'd say. So it really was until I had broken up with my ex-husband that I was still really suffering with anxiety, but in a way that I could still function in society. We call it treading water. So those of you who suffer with anxiety know that we can kind of put it out of our minds a little bit and just kind of avoid certain situations that would trigger us. So for me, highways, I didn't like to drive on highways, so I just wouldn't drive on highways. Going too far away from my home, going overseas, anything like that, I just avoided. So no one had any idea that I would suffer from those sorts of things, apart from those who were really close to me, and those who were really close to me didn't understand. So they were just really frustrated, if anything. So I had been working a lot with kinesiology. So that's the reason why I got into kinesiology, is because, this lady that I met through a mother's group, she started working with me using kinesiology, and it really took me leaps and bounds out of my shell when it came to my anxiety. But the real turning point for me was when, like I said earlier, everything fell away, and I just realized that no matter how much I gripped to something, it was never going to necessarily be in my control. And so thus I sort of surrendered fully. And that's where I really started to move forward from that anxiety disorder, which is all, pretty heavy stuff. And I've skimmed past a lot of things because I'm wary of the time and, the relevance as well. But I think that what I love so much about being able to tell these stories is that I don't tell these stories from a place of feeling triggered by them anymore. I tell these stories from a place of really feeling so empowered as to how far I have come, and being able to, again, be that hope for people who may be just feeling like there is no light at the end of the tunnel, because that's how anxiety feels. It feels like you're living there and there's nothing you can do to change the way that you are, because, I spent probably the better part of 10 years trying to get out of that hole, and I couldn't. Like, nothing I tried got me out of that hole. And so I thought that I just had to live like that, and it's just not the case. Like, it doesn't matter how long you've been in the hole, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's just figuring out for yourself how to sort of get there, and allowing other people around you to help, and maybe not always taking the most conventional route as well, if the conventional routes haven't worked for you in the past, that is, because sometimes they can. But if they haven't worked for you, then look outside of the box, go and try something that's a little bit more alternative. And then also just remembering, what helped me the most was remembering that we're not actually in control at all. So as much as that sounds scary, it actually helped, because no matter how hard you clutch, anything can happen, and we just got to live for this moment, really.
Oh,
So
I just love your story. I mean, I know I've heard it before, but I could listen to it all day. It's like mind boggling, because it really wasn't that long ago, because you're young, man. I keep forgetting, like I'm nearly 44. And how old are you now, Emily?
31.
31. This woman's 31. Like all this has happened within that small time frame. And you were in the thick of it you said 26. That's not that long ago.
Yeah.
That's
I was
amazing.
in the thick of it. I met my son's father, as I said, I was about 17 when I met him, after I finally dismantled the relationship with this past abusive fellow. And he was great, he was lovely and all of the things, and then he ended up having his own demons and fell into drugs earlier on, and he was into some really bad drugs too. So you stop dating the person and you start dating the drug, and that was in itself, it was really, really, really difficult to have your one place of safety feel completely unsafe. And so I fell pregnant really young. I was 20 when I fell pregnant with Byron, and I wasn't expecting to, because I had so many fertility issues. I had polycystic ovaries, endometriosis, and of course, when you look at the energetic and emotional connections with endometriosis and polycystic ovaries, they often do come from like this disconnection from the feminine, which can be a massive result of sexual abuse as well. So I was told I'd never have kids, especially not naturally, because of how severe the form of endometriosis and polycystic ovaries that I had was. So when I fell pregnant at 20, I had this understanding in myself at the time that if I didn't have this baby, then I would never be able to have, or I may never be able to have another baby. So I wasn't ready. I had literally just sold all of my stuff. I had decided to leave my drug addict boyfriend and fly home to New Zealand and start a new life. And I found out I was pregnant with his child. So at the time, my parents weren't living here in Australia either. They had already gone home. So I was by myself in this country, no financial support whatsoever, wasn't eligible for government assistance. My boyfriend was a drug addict, and his mum, who was a great support, had just been diagnosed with terminal cancer. So I was watching her die and helping her, and he was kind of just disappearing all the time. And we were living in her house because that was all we had, and it was tough. It was really, really tough. And then when he was born, he was a tough baby too, because babies really do absorb the stress that you're under. So like within pregnancy and things like that, it's just so important to stay relaxed and participate in things like meditation and yoga and anything that you can do to keep yourself calm, because if you don't, you will end up with this crazy baby that never ever stops crying and never ever stops, never wants to sleep. I was lucky that when my son was born, my parents moved back to Australia and helped me, and I'm so blessed that I had that. But I was still working like 3 jobs to try and keep myself out on my own to like look after this child, because my parents' relationship with me is good, but when we live together, we often can't live together because there's still some of those dependencies on alcohol, which doesn't it wasn't the environment that I wanted my little boy to be in. So so I did that, and then I met my daughter's dad, and he was like this savior to me. I was like, oh, he only ever wants to be a dad. He was so in love with my son, and I was like, this is the right choice. He seems so grounded and not abusive or anything like that. And we very quickly fell pregnant with my daughter, like within 6 months of dating. We weren't even living together. So this "you're not fertile" thing, it doesn't exist. I'm the most fertile person on the planet, I think. So it just goes to show that don't always take doctors' opinions as the gospel, because there's still hope there. But yeah, we fell pregnant very, very quickly, and I think at the time I was so young, and I just wanted a brother or sister to try and fill that void of that family that I never really feel like I had, and I felt like my kid wasn't going to have. So it was just this jumping into whatever I could clutch to at the time. And I would never say it's a mistake, because everything that we go through, even if it wasn't the wisest choice, it leads us to exactly where we need to be. And so we were together for about 4 years. We got married during that time, but he was a different kind of abusive. He was emotionally manipulative. Like, I was never enough. It was always, you're broken, you're broken, you're broken. You need to change this, you need to fix that. And I believed him, because I thought the sun shined out of his bottom. So I was always trying to be this version that he wanted me to be. And that was what eventually led me to burnout, because I was still working and studying and, running a business and looking after kids and, trying to be all the things that he needed me to be. And, so that he could work less, so that he only had to work 3 days a week while I worked like 6 days a week. And because I wanted to be the perfect wife,
Yeah.
And that comes from people pleasing, always comes from a place of needing to be loved and the fear of not being loved. And so I was definitely living from that space when I had this big burnout, this big breakdown, I suppose. But what a wonderful life to live, for the life that I now choose to lead, because as you said, a lot of these things happened by the time I was, 26. I was really young. And I feel like, I'd been married, I'd had 2 kids, I'd been divorced, had all these like traumatic experiences. And I really like the fact that I can talk to pretty much anyone about anything and have some level of relatability to them, because in my line of work, that's really important, to be able to empathize from a place of I kind of understand where you might be at the moment or how you might be feeling. So it's a blessing to me. And at the time, it definitely didn't feel like a blessing. At the time, it felt horrendous. But when you move on from things and you forgive and you heal and you let go and you do the inner work, you do the self work, then you come out the other side of that and you see it as like this marathon of this achievements. They are blessings. Truly, our curses can be such a blessing. And that's not to say that I'm open for more of that to come into my life. I've made it very clear with the universe that I've done my lessons, and I have. And and I think that showing up and being transparent about those things and social media is really important, because as you said, when people see me from the outside, they might think that I have everything perfect. And in my opinion, I think I have such a wonderful life because of where I've come from. But at the same time, it's still not perfect. Like my son's got massive special needs, like really it's hard to even keep him in school, so like we deal with that now every single day. But in comparison to where I've come from, it's like I just get to live in gratitude every day. And I think that's a big piece. If you've been through a lot, or if you're going through a lot, just try to live in gratitude for what's not going wrong, because you can definitely be in worse situations. And I think that's a major mindset piece.
And what do you think broke the pattern? So you're with this amazing partner now, so I can see everything you've said up to this point. I feel like you just kept attracting of more of what you knew, like the abuse, the emotional, the substance abuse, all that kept coming back into your life. And obviously you're with this amazing man now. Is there 1 or 2 things that broke the pattern that you can see, or was it over time?
It was definitely a accumulation of things, but I love the saying, we repeat what we don't heal. So I was repeating these situations until I, got to a point where I was willing to work on those things. And so obviously kinesiology played a massive role in that, but also my own decision made a massive role in that. Sometimes we place too much emphasis on things that happen without, outside of ourselves, of somebody else having the answers, somebody else being able to fix things for us. And a lot of the time it is a massive decision that you just need to make within yourself as to what you will and won't accept. And how you do and don't want to live. I remember, when I left my ex-husband, I went to the beach and I got a stick from the beach and I literally drew a line in the sand. And I said, this is the life I have been living. And this is the way people have been treating me. And this is what I've accepted into my life, because we play a massive part in everything that happens to us. And I know that's a hard pill to swallow, but I feel like I'm entitled enough to say that because of what I've lived. We attract a lot of that in for ourselves. And whether we do it within our lifetime or whether we've done it before we even entered this lifetime, we wanted those lessons on some level to teach us something. And so when I drew this line in the sand, it was like this metaphorical way of me saying to the universe, okay, this is what I have been accepting up until this point to teach me the things that I now know. And as I cross this line in the sand, I now no longer invite those things into my life. I am detaching from the need to please other people. I am detaching from the need to fix other people, to save other people, to feel loved because of a version of myself that I think they want me to be. And now I cross this line in the sand and I let go of control, and I will just invite people who see me as I am and who want to have me in their lives. And if they don't, then that's fine. And I think that was the biggest changing point. And I know when I met Julian, my current partner, that old voice in my head said, you don't deserve him. He's perfect.
Yeah.
What's he going to want with a woman with as much baggage as you do? And I had to tell that that voice in my head, the mind that is not us. We are not our thoughts. We are the space between our thoughts. I had to tell my mind to take a back seat to that and to just really open to what I want, not necessarily what I think I deserve.
Mm-hmm.
And as I did that, I let go of expectations and I just enjoyed the ride. And I guess that's what I come back to every day, is let go of expectations and just surrender and enjoy the ride, enjoy the moment.
And now you're engaged.
Now we're engaged.
I'm
Yeah. And now
excited.
it's just a matter of letting go of control over whether or not we can have our wedding and our
Because of
engagement.
COVID. But at least if we get locked down for the next 12 months, you'll be an expert. You won't.
Totally.
Not anymore, because you're in a different space.
Well, I did say to him this morning, I'm like, if it's just you and me on our wedding day and we have to just get married at, wherever, then it's not the worst thing in the world. Because
it is for me, because I'm a bridesmaid, Emily. Okay.
At the end of the day, the most important thing is to cement that union. And the first time around wasn't real. It didn't feel real to me. So this definitely feels like whatever will be, but it will be perfect.
Oh, you're bloody amazing, just so you know. And when you listen, you probably don't realize, but when you listen back to this, hopefully you will hear what I hear and what all the other listeners hear. Like I'm going to swear, but one freaking amazing, inspirational powerhouse that, I don't think people have any idea. Even a lot of people that think they know you quite well will be shocked at that, what you've been through to get where you are now. And it just is amazing, like complete inspiration. So thank you so much for sharing all that. It blows my mind, as I said, every time I hear it, and it makes me realize why I love you so much. I had goosebumps through most of that, which, I know we have a massive connection, but your story is just truly amazing. And I can't wait for your book to come out. I'll be one of the first buyers. So it's exciting. Before we finish up, I've got 3 questions for you, but before I forget, and I don't want to forget this because I want to ask, I know people are going to be inspired by your story. If people want to get in contact with you or follow you or work with you, how can they do that before I forget? Otherwise it might get lost.
Yeah, absolutely. Just also to add to that, as a little bit of I probably should have done that before I launched into my story, that it can be a bit triggering for some people who have experienced similar situations, or they're in similar situations. And, I just encourage you that if anything that I've talked about today has triggered you or made you feel any kind of emotions that you're worried about, definitely reach out to, your support networks around you, or drop Michelle or I a bit of a message, and we'll help to sort of soundboard that with you. But yes, if you would like to contact me, you can find me. You can Google me. Apparently, I've got a good Google presence.
Emily Shine. It's Emily Shine.
Yeah, so emilyshine.com is my website, which has all of my contact information, phone number, Instagram, Facebook, all of that sort of stuff. But you can find me on Facebook at Emily Shine 1111, and I think that Instagram is just Emily Shine 11. I confuse myself with that, but
let's put some 11s in there. You'll find her. If not, track her down through me. We work a lot together, Emily and I, and you'll see, if you follow my Facebook or my socials, you'll see a lot of Emily on there. We've just got our new cacao business together as well, so we're selling heart to heart cacao. So it's all happening. It's very exciting.
Yes, absolutely. If you haven't already got onto the cacao, definitely check out Heart to Heart Cacao. That's a big, a big project close to Michelle and I's heart. And the reason why we called it Heart to Heart Cacao is because we wanted to share that heart opening medicine from our hearts to your heart. So it's special. It's very special stuff.
It's beautiful. All right. So before we leave, you don't get off that easily. I've got 3 very deep questions. Emily ensures me she doesn't even know what they are, so I'm just going to hit her up. These are the Oprah Winfrey questions that she asks on her Super Soul Sundays, which I just am obsessed with her. So I thought I will just copy Oprah Winfrey and ask the same questions. So my first question to you is, what is the soul?
Oof. That is a deep question, Oprah.
I told you they were deep.
What is the soul? The soul is our essence. It's the energy that resides within us. It is not our physical environment. It is not our physical body. It is our truth. It is the energy that, it exists within us. And it also is the energy that exists, I believe, in source energy, whatever you kind of identify source energy as, whether it is a deity of some description or whether it's just the universe or Mother Nature. I believe that is also a part of our soul.
I agree. And so then what happens after you die?
So my belief on this, which is just my belief, because we don't know, none of us really know. My belief on this is that I believe in reincarnation. I believe in past lives. I believe that we come back over and over and over again. I also believe that we have soul pods, so pods of souls that kind of travel together. And so therefore you'll reincarnate with people that feel very familiar to you because you've probably shared lifetimes or done work with them in the past, and a lot of friendships that kind of, blossom where you just kind of have that instant connection, much the same as Michelle, you and I. It's because we've probably traveled together at some point through another lifetime, and there's a sense of familiarity in that. So I believe we kind of go over to the other side, and if there is, people in the physical realm that still need our assistance, or there is a reason why we haven't yet moved on, that we can kind of hang around, and that's why we can get, ghosts or spirits kind of present with us, because they might be sticking around for a certain reason. But I also believe that time on the other side is a lot faster than time here. So what feels like an eternity for us is actually just a blip in the matrix to them. So if you do have, family, loved ones hanging around, don't feel sad that they're kind of, it's wasting their time. It's not that. I don't think that it's that case. So I think we kind of go over to the other side and finish up any unfinished business or assist wherever we can. And then we kind of move on to this next kind of phase where it's either we go up and move into a source energy and work as a helper, or, we may have finished our lessons that we needed to learn for ourselves through the human realm, and we work from a place of source energy. Or we reincarnate into another body and we learn some more lessons. And I think that some people have been doing this for a really, 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 really long time. And I think there are people here who have perhaps just started their journeys, and that's why we have old souls and new souls and things like that. So I believe that's what happens after we die. But as I said, it's definitely just my belief, and no one really knows.
No one does. And that's what I love. See, we don't ever have control, even up to the end. We got no idea what's going to go on.
No.
And the last question is, what do you know for sure?
What do I know for sure? I don't think that I know anything for sure. I think that's the most interesting thing about life, is that there is always so much to be said in the questioning of things. And I think I believed I knew a lot of things for sure for a while. And, that can sometimes create a sense of egotism within us, because we are so sure about our belief systems, and we are so sure about, this, that, and all the rest of it, that we can become closed off to the perspective of everything changing in a minute. So I don't know that I know anything for sure. And I'm just trying to think, is it that, I know that I'm physical? Because no, I don't know for sure that I am physical.
No, we
That's my answer to that is nothing. I absolutely
that's a good answer.
Nothing for sure.
I haven't heard that one before, but that's probably the most accurate one out of the lot. So, because we don't know
anything for sure. No, I think it's really humbling to actually be okay with that as well, because it does give you the ability to, listen and learn. And that's something that I have struggled with in the past, like, being the passive person, being the listener, being the learner. Sometimes I'm just so used to being the leader, the teacher, that I can be I used to be a little shut off to learning other perspectives. And that's such a shame, because that's how we don't absorb the information that we need to absorb. So it's definitely this is another testament as to how we always self-improve.
Yes,
it's so interesting how we're always evolving. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. That was amazing. I knew it was going to be good, but that was even better than I expected. So I think because we have such a good connection, it's just easy easy conversation. So
it was. It felt very easy. It felt very natural talking to you, Michelle.
Yes,
like we could have talked all day.
We could have
made a very, very long podcast.
We might, I was just thinking, another one. I was thinking halfway through it, we might have to get you back. Might have to get you back for round 2 and we can delve into something else. So if you are listening to this and you want to hear a bit more of Emily's shine, make sure you let me know. And also when you're listening to these podcasts, if you are loving them, I would absolutely love if you can share it with your family and friends. And if there's a particular guest speaker that you actually really feel aligned with or you feel inspired by, then get in contact and tell them, because there's nothing better than hearing from someone that's listened to you and then come to you and said, wow, that was amazing. And you've really helped me by doing this, this, and this. I've already had a couple of people message me since even my story when I put it out saying, wow, I had no idea. And that's just changed my life. And it really means something to the people that are being interviewed. So yeah, if you loved what Emily did, be in contact. And she's very approachable, very lovable. And we're all part of the soul tribe anyway. So so thank you so much. And
thank you.
I'll see you for round 2 in the near future.
I'm looking forward to it.